Aemond Targaryen is definitely a complicated character that underwent a drastic transformation within Season 2 of House of the Dragon. From a man that was being cradled in an extremely exposed way where he seemed weak, vulnerable, and showed an ounce of remorse, ultimately concluded with him transforming into a traitorous menace that was prepared to burn his own brother in order to stake a claim to the Iron Throne. He's a complex character to understand that went through a lot as a child, and it's difficult to know what truly motivates him other than anger and rage. So I thought I'd answer that question and try to look inside the mind of the Aemond Targaryen that we've seen in the TV series. So let's get into it. Here is Aemond Targaryen's disturbing mind analysed. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers from Season 1 and Season 2 of the show. One thing that's clear to see about Aemond is that he obviously suffers from the whole middle child syndrome that's present, and it's almost dictated the way that he feels not only about his brother, but the resentment towards the way that the system and structure works when it comes to inheriting power. Something that we've seen within another character in the show, his uncle, Daemon Targaryen. When Aemond was younger, he showed that he was prepared to do what he could do in order for duty, for the realm, and for the strengthening of the family line and their name. Even being prepared to marry his sister Helena when Aegon referred to her as weird, showing that even though he was younger than his older brother, he was almost more understanding of what needed to be done to hold on to the power that they had. The difference between Aegon and Aemond is their birthright. Aegon almost didn't need to care. He acted wild, he drank a lot, he didn't really learn how to fight, didn't bother to understand the tactics of warfare, or even learn the ancient language because he knew that his birthright pretty much enabled him to inherit power and one day sit on the Iron Throne. Whereas that wasn't the case with Aemond. Out of his two other siblings that he was raised with, he knew that Helena was going to go on to become queen and his brother would be king. So that left an empty void in his life and a lack of purpose. Something which nobody else in his family was able to relate to. He was the outsider, and I feel that led him to feel as though he needed to prove himself in other ways. The very thing which I think contributed to him feeling different to the others, something that had stuck with him into adulthood, even in Season 2 where he was being cradled. This is why he learned how to fight, why he mastered the High Valyrian language, was more knowledgeable with tactics of warfare, and was prepared to attempt to bond with the largest, most powerful dragon in all of the realm at a tender age. The complete opposite to his older brother. He had to overcompensate in order to be recognized, but even after doing all of that, I still think he felt as though he was left in the shadows, because even with all of those skills and the wealth of power and knowledge, it was redundant, because he wasn't sat on a throne and had no true way of exhibiting it. He was the middle child, and he didn't have any direction. It was in Season 2 where we saw that the bullying that he endured from not only his brother, but Jason Viserys in Season 1 reached its limit. Aemond has always had power and rage within him, and it's expressed most when he loses his temper. And I think the turning point for Aemond as a character and when the darkness took over his mind was in the early part of Season 2 when Aegon humiliated him when he was laughing at his brother along with other people for being cradled and comforted by the woman. That occurred, and then in the very next episode he set Vhagar on Aegon with the intention of killing him. And then when that failed, if Sir Criston Cole hadn't arrived, he may well have finished it himself and taken the life of his brother. What's particularly interesting about this is the fact that he hasn't even shown any signs of remorse for what he did. If anything, he's doubled down on it. He had the opportunity to kill Rhaenys, and he chose not to at first, prioritizing the death of his brother. And as well, even after killing Viserys at the end of Season 1, he showed some signs of regret later on, so it showed there was a clear difference in the way that the character's mind was now. With Aegon, it showed that it was personal and that he wanted his brother out of the picture so that he could forge his own destiny and lead the life that he felt he always deserved, but most importantly, had to work for. Aegon was still almost bullying, undermining and underestimating Aemond like he was when they were younger, and I think it reached its limit with him and he knew that it was time to act. Despite Aemond being removed from Rhaenyra and her side of the family when he was growing up, there was always something within Aemond that showed signs of him not only resonating with Daemon, but looking up to him and almost wanting to be like him. And that is very much the case. The two of them had similar lives and upbringings, both living in the shadow of their older brother, the one that would inherit the crown despite that being the very thing that they wanted. This was shown most in Season 2 of the show, where we saw that both of them looked to betray the person who they were in support of, and their arcs almost be mirrored right up until the end. Aemond is a fighter just like Daemon, and their personality traits are also very similar in just acting and dealing with the consequences later. I think something that molded and shaped Aemond's mind as he was growing up was the fact that he was bonded with Vhagar and he had the most powerful dragon in the entirety of Westeros. We've seen how having a dragon can change people and that it's a considerable amount of power for somebody to hold. This was made apparent with what Jace said to Rhaenyra in the most recent season. By Aemond having Vhagar, it meant that he could pretty much be fearless. He was not only good at fighting, but he had the dragon to back him up too. So for the most part, whenever Aemond has been quietly just sitting in the corner, just merely observing with his soft tone, it's because he doesn't need to overcompensate, because he knows what he's truly capable of. However, towards the end of Season 2, especially Episode 8, we saw a completely different side to him. One which embodied fear, panic, and like he didn't know what to do for the first time since ascending the Iron Throne as Prince Regent. Him forcefully grabbing Helaena was something that felt out of character. It was an act that reeked of desperation and almost like a last-ditch attempt to strengthen in some kind of way. So it was interesting seeing him actually be challenged and seeing the fear in his eye for the first time in what felt like the entirety of the show. With all-out warfare now being on the horizon, and the Blacks being stronger than what Aemond could have ever predicted, with his mother also betraying him having no ally with his sister Helaena, and Aegon being gone, he's going to be all alone and have to deal with what's occurring in front of him all by himself. So I think we could go on to see more of the side to Aemond that's fueled by anger and rage, the one which leads him down a destructive pathway. Aemond's childhood, the bullying he endured, the taking of one of his eyes, and the fact that he was the middle child that didn't have any true direction or pathway painted out is something that's vital as to why he turned out the way that he did in adulthood. He needed Aegon to humiliate him one final time for him to come out of the shadows and for the darkness and hunger for the throne, but most importantly, direction in life to come to the forefront. I think his and Daemon's stories are very similar, and that could well be why Aemond almost looked up to his uncle in a strange, non-traditional kind of way, because he was the only person around him that would be able to actually understand what it was that he would have been feeling in being the child that was hungry for the throne, learnt the skills in order to be a good leader, but would ultimately never go on to warm the seat and wear the crown. It's going to be interesting to see the pathway that Aemond now takes, especially because he's acting more impulsively rather than strategically, as the fear of losing the very thing that he's just claimed will be sat at the forefront of his mind. He's no longer being cradled and in a vulnerable way, but instead he's taken what he wanted and is now looking to hold on to it, the very thing that he's been working on in the shadows. So, there you have it, Aemond Targaryen's disturbing mind analysed. If you want to see more videos on House of the Dragon, then click on the card in the top corner. There's an entire playlist there, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. Are you a fan of Aemond Targaryen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, be sure to hit subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.